Part 1 of 8. Welcome. Today we will delve into the depths of Nazi underground facilities, hidden from sight and virtually forgotten after the war, yet still guarding secrets of the great military machine. How could one country build 15 secret bunkers across Europe simultaneously, maintaining their enormous scale and intricate engineering? Why have some of these constructed sites remained almost untouched to this day, while others have vanished completely? And importantly, what was the purpose of all this construction? For defense, for weapons production, or for hiding the regime's key figures? What is the current state of these fortifications? And what role do they play in understanding the scope of the Nazi war industry? Today, we will uncover the truth that will change your perception of history. Because what is concealed behind concrete walls can overturn our ideas about war. Are you ready to see the secret sites that remained silent for decades? Then, let's begin. Across Europe, scarred by brutal history, dozens of mysteries are hidden. Mysteries of underground complexes, countless tons of concrete, thick walls, and concealed tunnels left behind after the Nazi era. Their scale is staggering. 15 secret bunkers, many of which have been preserved in pristine condition or on the verge of collapse, like ghosts of the past, coming back to life in our time. These structures are not merely stone fortifications, not just shelters. They are complex technological instruments, tactical platforms, spacecraft buried into the earth to conceal the secrets and power of the German military machine. It is here that the spirit of the Second World War lurks, where mechanisms capable of changing the course of history are frozen in time. Let's start with an example that shatters all norms. Mimoyecques Fortress, or as its designers called it, Construction Facility 711. Located deep within France, in the heart of Normandy, it was not merely a fortress or command post, but a giant underground complex. Thousands of square meters of tunnels and halls, formed by connecting railway tunnels, mines, advanced engineering solutions, and forced labor embedded into every facet of this structure. Construction began in September 1943, when Nazi Germany, already confident in its rising military power, understood that it needed not only to enhance its capabilities, but also to create an impenetrable shield around its weapon manufacturing centers and secret laboratories. And it was here, in the heart of Europe, that a giant was built, almost devouring the land itself. Within a network of marble corridors, deep beneath layers of concrete and metal, were the V3 weapons, marking a new era of hyper-long-range artillery capable of destroying cities like Metz. And inside this concrete labyrinth, evidence was found. Hundreds of thousands of tons of ammunition, over 4,100-ton aerial bombs, many of which, heavy and massive as if hammered into the ground, were designed to destroy enemies from the air. Allied aviation, fully aware of the threat, attacked these positions without retreating even a step. Yet many structures managed to withstand the onslaught, reliably hidden, protected by an invisible layer of concrete and iron. Back in 1944, during one of the most formidable assaults, the bombing, main Allied forces deployed not only aircraft, but also super-powerful bombs, the type called Talboy. Their mass exceeded 5 tons, and their destructive power rivaled lightning and volcanic eruptions, forever altering the structure of this labyrinth. But even these terrifying strikes, these storms of explosions, cannot compare to the secret hidden within this fortress. Why, despite such short time and obvious efforts, it was never completely destroyed? Why, despite the destruction, these complex objects still guard their secrets and mysteries? Moving slightly further north toward the Scandinavian coasts, we discover an entire network of bunkers, hundreds and thousands scattered across Denmark. Here lies the richest archive related to the defense of the Atlantic Wall, a defensive fortification line meant to cover the entire Western Front and protect Germany from potential sea invasions. Bunkers, fortifications, bomb shelters, heavy artillery batteries, all serve as evidence not only of the iron will and technical arsenal of the Third Reich, but also of a scale that surpasses common understanding. Especially well-preserved are examples of engineering solutions: granite walls, cast iron hatches, creaking mechanisms upon opening, the noise of springs and footsteps echoing in corridors. All testify that these structures still leave their firm imprints. But in this journey through underground corridors and tactical nodes, one cannot help but mention projects that seem to lurk in the shadows: the tunnel systems in Normandy, Vienne, and Waingode. These architectural marvels became both places and symbols, sites where missile installations were developed, echoes of which still resonate in distant space. These tunnels, hidden underground like the fangs and teeth of a monster, were intended not only for sheltering equipment and personnel, but also for launching missile systems, capable of reaching targets on the other side of the continent or beyond. Several hundred meters of tunnels equipped for launches, all built through slave labor and invisible efforts, combining mechanics, chemistry, and most importantly, faith in superiority. The most mysterious of these projects remains the La Coupole complex in northern France, a massive structure surrounded by chains of reinforced concrete walls and covering an area comparable to several city blocks, with its enormous dome measuring 47 meters in diameter. Built in the 1940s, it was designed to store V-2 rockets, precise and deadly weapons armed with chemicals and chemical precision. Construction took a long time and was carried out intensively, yet it remained incomplete, half-finished like a shattered, unfinished sailboat that could not withstand the trials of time. Why? Part 3 of 8. What forces halted the construction? And most importantly, what significance did this complex hold in the strategy of the Third Reich? Finally, the project called Riese, a network of tunnels stretching hundreds of kilometers across southern Poland. Here we see not only a strategic hub, but also evidence of extraordinary scale. Tunnels up to 9 kilometers long, interconnected, concealing laboratories, weapons storage facilities, command centers, all creating the impression that an entire underground city was built, hovering in the shadows above the world. Its scale is a testament to the understanding that victory is achieved not only on the battlefield, but also within this underground realm, where the most catastrophic projects were developed and preparations for destruction were made. Amid this vast landscape of concrete structures, a key question arises. In what condition were these legendary complexes built? What was the true reason for their construction? Were they built solely for defense, as shelters for Nazi leadership, or for transforming these fortifications into death factories? Why have many of them survived in pristine condition, and how is it possible to hide these enormous structures from the Allied eyes? And what allows us today to understand why these particular structures could become the key to uncovering the true scale of the Nazi military industry? Why they might overturn our perceptions of those dark and bloody years of war? Within this sinister and grand labyrinth of underground facilities lie secrets kept for centuries. Their mysteries could change our view of history, serve as keys to understanding the very essence of the most mystical, most enigmatic, and simultaneously cruelest epoch ever faced by humanity. The question remains open. What exactly will these complexes reveal to us today, after decades, after centuries? And what role did the underground cities, hundreds of tons of concrete and metal hidden in the shadows of history, play in Europe's fate? Perhaps only deciphering their secrets will allow us to understand how far human mad ambition has gone, and how much remains hidden behind iron doors and concrete walls. In a world shrouded in the shadows of the past, there are many mysteries that have preserved their secrets in the silent depths of time. These secrets are not just pieces of history, not merely monuments of military turmoil. They are witnesses to an era that forever changed the face of the world, and their destinies are intertwined with the fates of millions. Inside these places, lost to the broad masses, hidden beneath layers of earth or forgotten walls, lie evidence capable of not only shedding light on the past, but also leaving marks on our understanding of current conflicts, resistance, and destruction. They are like clues hiding destinies, the costs of resistance, and moments that shape the present. And it is about them that today's story unfolds. About discoveries that surprise us, about the fates of objects that, despite destruction and oblivion, continue to speak. The story begins with one of the most remarkable discoveries of the 20th century. In the distant year 2004, at the heart of British historical science, an unprecedented event occurred: the accidental discovery of the Meze battery. This object, forgotten for decades after the war, was hidden beneath layers of earth, as if a creature that had fallen asleep for centuries. But fate had other plans. A prominent professor and researcher, Gries Stern, happened to be nearby and accidentally noticed the entrance to an underground structure. What did he see inside? 15 luxurious, nearly intact artillery pieces, surviving after the bombings of 1944, seemingly condemned to oblivion. Yet, they continued to shell the enemy for 3 days after the Allied troops landed, and also fired upon the opposing shores of the warring armies. Inside the battery, everything remained: ammunition, evidence of fierce battles, personal belongings of soldiers, German helmets, gas masks, maps. They all testified to resistance, to the resilience of those who defended their land to the last breath. This object is not just an archaeological find, but a living testimony of struggle and destruction. A vivid reminder that, even after the war's capitulation, it continues to live in the memory of subterranean strings. But this is only the first chapter of a long story. In the 21st century, in another corner of Europe, in Austria, in the small town of Sankt Gorgen, archaeologists stumbled upon a unique discovery: 4 bunkers, completely preserved since the end of the war. These structures are true repositories of the past, millions of months of isolation, with their window covers and half-destroyed internal walls. What surprises is that inside, they found personal belongings, medicines, weapons, documents left behind by people who lived and fought here. All of this is like a time capsule sealed within architecture. Traces of gold leaf remain on the walls, and in the rooms, faint echoes of the voices from days gone by can still be heard. Today, these bunkers are not only a war memorial, but also a testament to how terrible years remain alive in our memory, in the material, in the structure, and in the indifferent silence. At the other end of Europe, in Denmark, the story takes on a different hue, dark and ominous. There, on the coast, bunkers that have remained in perfect condition were discovered. For example, the Deperliak blockhouse, a complex structure left over from the Nazi occupation era. Among stone walls, remnants of military equipment, rocket industry components, and even weapon samples have been preserved. These, like hotspots on the map of oblivion, serve as reminders of an era when Europe was a battlefield of technology, science, and fear. These structures are monuments to Nazi industry, evidence of technological progress that later turned into weapons capable of destroying an entire world. Their discovery repeats the fundamental truth that behind an apparent facade of oblivion, a labyrinth of resistance, cruelty, and technological achievement hides, echoing its own tragedy. Moving further, we find ourselves on the Polish coast of the Baltic Sea, where an entire complex has been discovered, commonly referred to as the Wolf's Lair. There, in hard-to-reach places, hundreds of structures are located: barracks, bunkers, laboratories. This complex, created in the 1940s by order of Hitler, served not only as a defensive position, but also as the site of an unsuccessful assassination attempt on the Führer in July of the same year, a moment when the fate of the entire war could have changed. Inside this labyrinth, elements of technology, personal belongings, documents, and traces of combat remain. Destroyed walls, signs of explosions, post-war destruction. In these ruins, an attempt is evident to understand what was hidden behind the facade of strategy and why some structures were built so meticulously that even decades later, they could not be entirely overcome. Moving to the marine depths, we encounter one of the most mysterious monuments: submarines abandoned in the Elbe. The decaying, submerged remnants of German U-boats from the 18th or 19th century initially evoke a sense of oblivion and loss. But in reality, they are the key to a larger picture. It turns out that, after many years, these underwater ruins were raised from the depths, tested and studied by military historians. Today, they are protected, witnesses to an era when underwater technology reached undeniable heights, and their fates are closely tied to the outcome of the war. Every crack, every rusted space tells its own story of heroism, despair, and forgetfulness. We relentlessly move further toward the heart of Nazi Germany, the Führer bunker. There, beneath the underground levels of Berlin's streets, is buried the last headquarters of Hitler, the place where he and his wife, Eva Braun, ended their tragic journey by committing suicide on April 25, 1945. This ruin is not just remnants of history. It is a sanctuary where the final moments of an era are preserved, a site that attracts hundreds of thousands of tourists, visiting the locations where the fate of Europe and the world was decided. What is hidden behind the wreckage? Which artifacts still remain there, unseen by most? What shocking discoveries await those who dare to look behind the illusion of oblivion? All these findings are vivid evidence that objects related to World War II did not disappear into forgetfulness. They were destroyed, hidden, and left behind so that they could not be forgotten. The question we continue to ask ourselves is, why did many of these objects remain almost invisible to society? Why was information about them kept under lock and key for so long, carefully concealed or cast into the shadows? How does discovering these secrets affect our view of the past? And most importantly, what do these artifacts reveal about the present? About authentic faces of resistance? About pain and destruction hidden behind the walls of time that cannot be ignored? These discoveries challenge historical narratives, reminding us that the past does not completely vanish. It lives deep within the earth, in the pages of archives, in ruins and remnants of memory. And only a true investigation can uncover all its secrets. What is hidden behind the threshold of each of these objects? What shocking stories remain unspoken? What facts, long hidden in the shadows, are finally ready to come to light? This is where the whole essence lies. Oblivion is never final. The truth usually waits for its moment to be reborn in our hearts and minds. During the hard years of World War II, when the global conflict reached the peak of its brutality, Nazi fortifications became undeniable symbols of the power and madness of the German regime. These massive bunkers, underground complexes, command centers, and defensive lines were all part of a carefully constructed system capable of inspiring both admiration and horror. In each stone, vault, and security system, there were not only strategic plans and weapons, but also the blood of hundreds, thousands of people. From nameless workers entrusted with building these structures, to combat crews continuing to defend them even after capitulation. Understanding the fate of these structures is a matter that touches not only on military strategy, but also on moral memory, public consciousness, and often political preferences. In the early 1940s, when Berlin and other European capitals fought for every precious moment of resistance, the Allies launched a large-scale campaign against Nazi defensive structures. This aspect of military action was extremely important. Dismantling these fortifications could mean not only losing strategic advantage, but also dealing a moral blow to the enemy, shattering its hopes for continued resistance. Among them, the most vivid and memorable were the objects given nicknames resembling monsters or weak points in the defense. For example, the Depperleck blockhouse, a massive reinforced concrete fortress that stood resilient against attacks for a long time, seemingly from a bygone era, from a time when people still believed in the strength of monolithic walls and in their solidity, the hope for an unchanging world. Another example is the Lacke Cupola, which, despite numerous bombing raids, continued fighting against destruction, and even after the landings, its functions were maintained for weeks. However, war is not only a battlefield, it is also a brutal demonstration of destructive power. After Germany's capitulation, the fate of these giants was no less dramatic. Many, despite brief periods of resistance, were destroyed in the early years of the post-war peace. The army of Allied troops, exhausted from capturing places that only yesterday were centers of Nazi might, spared nothing. Between 1945 and 1947, most of the bunkers and complexes were turned into ruins. They were blown up to prevent their future use, to erase any traces of the past. Just as the British did with Mimoyecques and Wyngood, some of the largest structures that served not only as military fortresses, but also as witnesses to tyranny. These are destroyed in exchange for safety. These destructions became an act of individual and collective responsibility, to erase reminders of military might and to break the will of future enemies. Nevertheless, history could not remain one-dimensional. Outside the battlefield, beyond the moment of destruction, a new strategic line emerged, transforming some sites into memorials, museums, and monuments. The Atlantic Wall, which once served as a defense line along the French coast, is now open to tourists. Majestic yet frightening structures that once symbolized human brutality are now places of remembrance, where millions of visitors come to honor the victims and understand the significance of history. In a world where the entire Second World War is perceived as a tragedy and a lesson, these monuments serve not only for tourism, but also for reflection. Ultimately, what is at stake? Memory or oblivion, fear or awareness? The emergence of new technologies, archaeological discoveries, and restoration work in the 2000s is another turn in this dramatic process. Recently, many forgotten or hidden sites have come to light, from submarines to missile complexes, which have drawn public attention. Some parts have been studied, and evidence of their strategic importance has become undeniable. Others have sparked debates about the feasibility of preservation. Who needs these ruins, especially if they still pose dangers? Abandoned explosive devices, radioactive materials, or damaged structures hazardous to people? These questions trigger discussions. Should they have been preserved or destroyed? Why did some consider it necessary to leave the memory, while others aim to eliminate potential threats? These reflections underline that the fate of these objects encompasses more than just military or historical considerations. It involves a fundamental moral dilemma. Meanwhile, growing interest in studying human casualties, construction crews, and construction errors helps understand not only the scale of human losses, but also the depth of strategic miscalculations. Were Nazi projects the result of genius or madness? What losses did workers suffer, and who upheld them through faith, fear, or hope? Strategic failures or successes? Research shows that behind every stone and structure were lives, often tragic or abandoned, now only remembered through ruins. An equally important aspect is the ecological footprint. Some destroyed and abandoned sites continue to impact the environment biologically. Submarines left near the coast and forgotten missile complexes slowly degrade natural landscapes, leaving behind dangerous traces of radiation, chemicals, or metal debris. What remains for future generations? Monuments to the pursuit of power or reminders of human recklessness? And how should we respond today? The final question that inevitably arises at these intersections of history and memory is, why are some objects destroyed while others are preserved? Why do certain monuments from the Nazi era become museums and tourist attractions, while others are blown up or buried deep underground? This choice, artistic, political, moral, shapes not only our view of the past, but also our future memory and our responsibility for what we leave behind. It reflects society's fears and hopes, its ability to part with brutal symbols of an era, while simultaneously learning lessons from them. In this context, It is not only the analysis of facts that matters, but also reflection on how the modern world treats heritage from the past. What lessons do the fate of these destroyed or transformed monuments teach us? Can history become a universal teacher if we preserve these witnesses? Or will we still retreat in the face of danger and fear, leaning toward destruction or oblivion? The answers to these questions are hidden behind thousands of photographs, archaeological finds, family stories, and political decisions, each forming an unbroken chain of memory and oblivion. Thus, the fate of Nazi bunkers and complex structures reveals not only strategic military decisions of the time, but also their long-term consequences for culture and morality. In every destroyed site, there are traces of the horrors of the past. In every monument, a reminder of the need to honor memory. These ruins and museums contain not only facts, but also lessons. The importance of recognizing mistakes, remembering tragedies, and learning from them. Lessons prepared by those very events. Ultimately, our attitude toward these objects, whether we destroy or preserve them, determines our future. What stories do we want to tell our children? Which values do we deem important? And what lessons is today's world ready to teach us so that in the future we can repeat? To draw conclusions, to remember, and to remember. That is what defines the path of humanity. The end.